Page, alcoholic.
Hey.
I'm really, really nervous. And I started to say, who was Lynn talking about? I'm trying to grow up, and I really don't want to, because I just turned 50 this last Thursday. Yeah, like, can you believe that? I'm in that group now. Everybody's done told me it's going to go real fast, but I thought it's going really fast now. God, could it go any faster? But anyway, my sobriety date is September 5th, 2003, and for that I'm grateful for, because it's from people like you in rooms like this that that's possible, and a sponsor and working the steps. Where do I start? I used to be worried when people were older and said, let's start from the beginning. You'd be like, whoa, that's going to be a long time. I was born in Wadesboro, North Carolina, which is about 50 minutes from here, to two loving parents. We sat at the table at night. We had dinner together. We went to church together on Sundays. I never didn't know that I wasn't loved. I don't have one of those torturous, terrible childhoods that I have any excuse or reason that maybe that I'm alcoholic. I used to want to look to try to find one, and it was just good enough finally that I realized it doesn't matter. I just know I am. And it was good to find somewhere that I belong too. So around the age of 11, my daddy did commit suicide because he had mental health issues. And then we moved in with my grandparents, who I called Big and One, and we stayed there from then on. I know, let's see, I'm hoping God will step on in here. I told Sarah before I started, I said, you know, if I stay nervous the whole time, it's because Paige is in charge, and I'm become selfish, you know what I'm saying? And it's all about me, because most of the time I try not for it to be about me, but I still make it about me most days. Anyway, around 16, 15, 16, I used to say that I knew exactly when I took my first drink, but I can't say that. I think it was somewhere between 15 or 16. We skipped school and we went to the river. If anybody's from Richmond County, they know where the PD is. And we skipped school and went down there, and that's the first place that I had my first drink. I know it was my first place. I know that I did it. I can't remember if it was a magic elixir. Eventually it did become one. But I just knew anything that I wasn't supposed to do, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I was told not to drink. I was told not to skip school. I was told all those things, but I did them anyway. We used to have a little creek in the house I grew up in that run behind the house, and I was always told don't go down there. And every day I went down there, and every day I fell in. And every day I fell in and come back and I lied about it, you know, every day. And that's before I ever took a drink. So around 17, you know, I got where I didn't want to be in school. School was just in the way. I just wanted to party all the time because I always had older friends and stuff like that. And by 17, 18, I had met my first love, and his name was Scooter, and he had a mullet. He looked like, I always say this, but it's the truth. He looked like Joe Dirt. If y'all have ever seen Joe Dirt, that's exactly what he looked like. So I remember taking him home to meet my mother and them and stuff like that. Of course, he came up with Levi jeans, no shirt, and barefooted. My mama was pleased. So anyway, of course, you know, just like a good alcoholic, you really don't date. We just move in. You know what I'm saying? We just move on in. So we moved in together. Of course, I had no job. He had no job. You know, you'll find out my mama was one of my greatest enablers. She helped pay the bills because we promised we was going to get jobs, and of course we never did. We kept partying and stuff like that, and eventually I ended up pregnant and had my first child. And I remember I thought that maybe that might fix it, maybe stop some of the stuff, you know, because there was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of abuse and stuff like that. I never knew that in my house, that men hit women. I never knew that, never saw that. And there's some men, not all men, because I used to think all men are bad, but I know better today. Just the majority, not playing. Picking. But because some of the men ended up with me, so I don't know which is better. But anyway, it was a lot of abuse and stuff like that, and I decided as soon as I had my son, he's probably about 8 weeks old, that I'd move home because I wanted to be the good mother and stuff like that. But really what I wanted to do is have a babysitter so I could go party, and that's what I did. I never really was a mother. I loved my children, but it was just not good enough. I mean, I don't know how to explain that. I wanted to be there with them, but I just could not be there with them. I had to go do this. You know, I was scared I was missing out. I wanted to go drink. I wanted to go party. I always thought I was missing something. Sometimes now I still do. Like I'm missing something, have to stay up half the night. I'll watch the same movie that I done seen 20 times until the end of it, no matter how tired I am. Like I'm gonna miss something. That still happens today. So eventually, you know, I ended up meeting somebody at Fat Boys. If anybody's from Richmond County, they know what Fat Boys is. I visited there every weekend, and so of course I met my first husband, and of course we moved in, and of course he wasn't working with his mama, and he ended up. I remember we'd been seeing each other about a week, and I heard somebody banging on the door and stuff like that. I thought, what is that? And of course, I went and opened the door, and it was the police, and they asked me, was he there? And I thought, well, he was just standing behind me, and he was gone when I turned around. I said, well, he was just there, you know. And they asked, could they go look? And I said, well, yeah. And of course, they found him in the closet and stuff. And so, of course, they carried him off to jail. And of course, I was devastated because we've been together a whole week now. And I was in love, and so I couldn't wait so I could get to go visit him in jail and stuff like that. And I went to visit him, and we were sitting there, and of course he asked me to marry him while he was sitting behind the glass. And I knew that must be the answer. So I remember calling Mama. I mean, Rockingham and Wadsworth's like 10 minutes away. But I remember stopping at the payphone, calling my mother Colette to let her know that he had asked me to marry him. Like, I was so excited. She said, isn't he locked up? You know, isn't he in jail? I said, that doesn't matter, he'll get out. So eventually we did get married. And of course there was a whole lot of drinking involved and a whole lot of abuse involved. And I remember the day before I got married, it was that night, of course we were living together, and night we got married. And I remember saying something to him, and as I did, he threw a hammer at me. The hammer stuck, the claw stuck in the wall right beside my head, and I got married the next day. So to this man who said, the only reason why he was that way is because he loved me, and he was scared if I ever left him, that he would just have to kill himself, or me. And I thought, oh, that must be love. You know? So, he wants to kill me or himself. He can't live without me, you know? So anyway, so we continued on that relationship. I had my daughter like 11 months after we got married, and we stayed with his mother for a while, and eventually I wanted to party more than I wanted to be a mama again, and so I began to party more, drink more, and of course, you know, somebody say if you got hung up, you just say, and it just got worse. You know what I'm saying? It just got worse. Now, when all that was going on and doing that drinking, now drinking was my answer then. It was. It kept me from being a 13-year-old suicide victim and stuff, and I knew that because I really didn't like myself much, and once I started drinking, I seemed to like myself better, and everybody else seemed to like me more too, you know, for some reason. And but I continued to drink and left him and moved back in with Mother. And you know, my granddaddy said that she keeps leaving, but she comes back with more. So my granddaddy always said, because every time I left, I brought a child back. It seemed like. I remember when I had my daughter. My mother was a nurse anesthetist, and when I had my daughter and was in there, and I just got through having her, I remember Mama doing spread eagle in front of the door, said, "Don't let her out. We'll have thousands of kids." You know what I'm saying? Fix her. I remember saying it just clear. But anyway, moved in with Mother. Of course, then she had 2 children to watch as I began to party and everything else. And in my story, there's more than alcohol, but I'll just keep singleness a purpose. But some of the things that I've done, there had to be more involved besides alcohol, as you'll hear. And I remember I only got 1 DUI, and I got it on amateur night, which was New Year's Eve. And I went to jail. And I remember calling Mama and saying, please come get me. And by this time, she was like over it. And she wasn't going to come get me, and I proceeded to worry her to death the rest of the night. And finally, she did call a magistrate to get him to come and get me out New Year's Day. And of course, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do different. And at this time, I'm stealing checks from her jewelry and stuff like that, and pawning them. And you know, one time, used to checks used to come back to your house with your bank statement and stuff. And I remember Mama asking me, she said, Paige, did you write this check? No. I didn't write that check. And she said, are you sure? And I said, no, I didn't write that check. She said, well, if you just tell me the truth, it'll just make it so much easier. And I said, she said, because what drives me crazy is my checks are out of order. And I said, yes, Mother, I wrote the check. And so what I took from that was, well, next time I'll just get the next check instead of panning through her checkbook since it drives her crazy. I'll just get the next check, you know what I'm saying? And that's what I did. I get the next check. So I ended up going to, I couldn't make it to court that day. for my DUI, and there was a lady at the time, her name was Julie Saunders, she's passed away now, and she's one of us, and she was also the clerk of court. And she knew my family, and when I went up there, she talked to me about maybe you want to go to treatment, I'll probably get you to go to treatment. And of course then I thought, I don't need treatment. And she said, well, you won't have to go to jail, and I said, well, I'll go to treatment. So I ended up going to treatment the first time in '96. They sent me to Monroe and stuff like that, and I remember seeing my one counselor and stuff, and I said, I really don't think I have a problem with drinking. I do know I have a problem with other stuff, but I don't think I have a problem with drinking. And they said, well, let's just keep, looking into this and stuff like that. Maybe you just like an exciting life. Maybe you like living on the edge. She said, maybe you ought to try whitewater rafting or mountain climbing. I said, are you crazy? That's dangerous. You know what I'm saying? That's what I said. And as I'm in all kind of sorted places and everything else. But I remember getting out. As soon as I got out, of course, I drank again. But what I did find out is what they say now in every room, everywhere, all the time. If you've ever made it here, it totally ruins it. Everything goes down once you know, immediately. So things just definitely got worse. But I had a high threshold for pain, so I held on for a while. So it continued like that. Ended up going to jail for writing some of my grandfather's checks, and I remember him saying that your mama might let you kill yourself, but I'm not going to be any part of it. So I went to jail for that and ended up getting out. And my name is still good with the bondsman in Waysboro. My nephew uses it on occasion. He uses my name to get out of jail now. They're crazy. But I use them a lot. So still 14 years later, my name is good with the bondsman in Waysboro. So anyway, ended up finally going back to treatment one time again because things just kept getting worse, and I kept getting locked up. And what I didn't like is how I was feeling anymore, and it wasn't any fun anymore, and I didn't want to do it, but I could not do it, and ended up going back to treatment, and they said maybe that I needed to go to a halfway house. And I said, well, I try anything, and by this time I was already married to my second husband and never got a divorce from the first husband, but I went ahead and married the second one anyway because I couldn't let him get away because he was a prize. And anyway, we ended up going to the halfway house. After I got there, I was there like 23 days that time, and I decided I needed to be a mother. Hadn't been a mother in a long time, but all of a sudden now I need to be a mama. And the truth of it all was not the mama, being the mama, is I wanted to know what that man was doing, where he was, what he was doing. I couldn't see him and stuff like that. So I left to go find him so maybe he could have a better life. So of course, immediately after I got out, I could continue to drink and stuff like that and do other things, and things got really bad, and finally I done borrowed money. I was banned from every place I ever went. Borrowed all the money that I could ever borrow. My mother was walking around with her pocketbook on her shoulder, would never put it down. If I walked through the house anywhere, my children were the best POs I ever had. They followed me around. They would ask me what I was doing, even in the bathroom. Mom, what are you doing? Because they was watching me. And of course it was aggravating at the time, but bless their heart, That's what they had to do. They was trying to help my mother. And so I remember standing outside this convenience store and thinking, I just really can't stop, but I want to stop, and I just don't know what to do. And the great idea for me to rob that store came to my head, because this was my rational thinking. If I rob this store, I'll get money and be able to get what I need, but then somebody will stop me. So that's exactly what I did. I robbed that store with a comb, and end up leaving there and stuff, and sit behind on the highway watching the police go up and down and stuff. And I didn't know this, but at the time that everywhere my mother and them went, they got stopped by police and pulled over and guns drawn on them and checking the car and stuff like that. And they finally told them they just need to go home and be still because they were trying to find me. And my first name is Candace, and everybody's always called me Paige. I remember they went to my brother's house looking for me, and my sister-in-law answered the door, and they asked her where Candace was, and of course she ain't never heard Candace. She said, I don't know who you're talking about. They thought that she was trying to protect me, and they about locked her up for that. She didn't know I was Candace. So I still say it now. Only people that's looking for me that call me Candace is a bill collector and the police. That's it. And so eventually they ended up catching me and stuff like that after I done robbed my second store. I robbed the second store down the highway and stuff like that because I needed gas. Of course, I didn't have no gas. I ended up going on a high-speed chase from Wadesboro to Rockingham. And as I was going over that river bridge down there, I decided to get rid of my weapon, so I threw the comb off the bridge as I went over the bridge. So, and of course, they could say, and any good criminal or somebody just don't quite live on the right side of the law or whatever, you know, I've watched cops many times, you know what I'm saying? I watch them. I know what they're doing when they're standing beside the road. And of course, they threw out the stakes, you know, the spikes on the road and stuff like that. And I was really proud of myself because I only got one tire. And then I went on a high-speed chase, flowing the tire off without one tire, like 120 miles an hour going through Rockingham, North Carolina on Highway 1. And I didn't care about anybody else except what I needed to get. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Danny. I'm sweating like, whew. But, eventually they caught me and I got locked up. And I remember they got there and they said, you need to call your mama. She's been really worried about you. She's scared that was the last time she was ever going to see you. So you need to call her. So I remember calling Mama and I said, Mom, I'm all right now. I'm locked up. I mean, you know, only people like me, when I get locked up and I finally get stopped, give that sigh of relief. I got that sigh of relief going to jail. I was glad to be in jail. It was like somebody finally stopped me. And I remember calling Mama and said, don't worry about getting me out. She said, honey, you ain't got no bond. I can't do nothing with no bond. So I said, but I still didn't even want to leave. I wanted to stay. So I stayed there. And while I stayed there, what I noticed was Alcoholics Anonymous came in the jails once a week. The ladies from church came to jail once a week. And I always thought people were really mean and really hateful and stuff like that. I really didn't think people generally cared about anybody except themselves. But that was just me. You know what I'm saying? I thought everybody else was like me. And while I was in that jail, I got 250 cards from people that I did not even know, saying that they were praying for me. Because see, my family I grew up there. My family lived there all their lives. And it was people that they knew, that I didn't even know that did that. And eventually I went to court. And I stayed in jail like 184 days. And Mama pretty much paid this, but she got me a good lawyer and stuff. And there was people that came and spoke for me at my hearing and stuff where I was going to get sentenced and everything else. And it was the jailers that were in the jail spoke for me. I was really surprised, the jailers. The lady I had worked for at the wagon wheel in Marshall, North Carolina, spoke for me. And she couldn't even believe it was me that had done those things. And because we can put on all kind of masks, you know, because I was working in Marshall, living in ways of raising havoc everywhere. But they didn't have any idea at all. So the judge ended up remanding me to the Bethany house, and I stayed there 7 months. And I would like to say that that's what it took or whatever, and I got it then, but I didn't. I ended up going back out. And this is where the miracle of the program, Alcoholics Anonymous, really happens because, am I getting emotional about this? But when I left that house and ended up not doing the things I was supposed to, I had a sponsor in name only. I didn't never call her. I waved at her across the room and stuff like that. And, but I ended up breaking into that house. I broke into the Bethany house and I broke into the safe and I went to prison for B&E and safe cracking of the halfway house. Now you fast forward till I get out and stuff like that and end up relapsing as soon as I get out. And I called to ask could I come back. And they let me come back. And then you fast forward then in another 14 months, I'm a house manager in the house that I broke in. And then you fast forward that, and 14 years later, I'm the director of that house I broke in. And where did that happen at? That's not supposed to happen. And all I know is it something that I deserve? I don't know about deserve. I know that I'm very blessed. And it's because of trying to do the next right, not always, but trying to do the next right thing. At first I didn't know what that was, but all it is to me, this is me, that doing the next right thing is even though I don't want to call my sponsor, when I first get sober, I call them anyway. Even though I really don't want to write a gratitude list and talk junk about it, I did it anyway. I didn't want to really do them steps because that was really stupid to me, I did it anyway. And in all that and doing it they said I did it out of spite. They said I did a lot of things out of spite my first year and ended up staying sober, all out of spite. Because I said, I'm going to learn that book so I can throw it back at them. I got so tired of hearing, you know what your problem is? It's 58 through 63. Well, it took me about 9 times of hearing it before I ever read it. And all I wanted was somebody just to give me the answers. And the greatest gift that I have today in the program is that it's my relationship with my God, of my understanding. And come to find out, it was the same God that I had when I was a child. I thought it had to be a different God. I thought it had to be somebody else's God. I thought it had to be, what I was doing was I was putting my God in a box, is what I was doing. And I finally realized it doesn't matter, that he, she, it, whatever, speaks to me through people like y'all. It could be somebody as I walk in the store, I'm going through something, somebody else says something, and I'm like, it's like really weird. It's like I used to be like, is it odd or is it God? That's what my sponsors used to tell me all the time. Is it odd or is it God? And I used to think it was odd, but now I believe that it's my God. And since being sober and stuff, I've had the wonderful pleasure of being able to meet all kind of people that's, I've never had anybody have my back besides my mama, or my brother, who I lost. I lost my mama, my granddaddy, and Maggie. The first year I was sober, and then I lost my brother at 4 years sober because he was killed and murdered. But what I found out is that no matter what happens in my life, I don't have to take a drink today. And the reason why that is because I work the steps. And have a sponsor, and I have a God of my understanding. And anything that I have going on in my life, I know that they'll come. They showed up every time. They show up and sit down. My sponsor said, you know what we do, Paige? We show up and we sit down. So I learned that from my sponsor and other women in my life. My picker was definitely broke. I always thought that what would make it better if I just had that man, or if I, just had this, or I had the perfect job, or but it was me doing the picking. Finally, my sponsor told me that if I just sit back and pray, just keep doing the next right thing, that God would make sure that I would have exactly who I needed to have, as long as I put my picker in my pocket. And so God blessed me with the man that I'm with today. Even though I'd like to kill him most days, I do consider myself very blessed. And I do love him because I know what he does. He loves me and he loves my family. I've never had anybody love my children that I was ever with. They always made me choose, either them or me, and he's not. He's a good papa. I got 4 granddaughters who've never had to see me drink or anything else, and children that can depend on me. The best thing to happen is my son was so mad at me, and he really didn't like me very much, and I got sober when he was 14, and it took about 7 years before he even wanted to stay with me, and he finally come up to stay with me. I thought, well, that's a good thing, but then we like to kill at each other the time he lived with me, and my sponsor finally said to me, well, Paige, have you made amends to him? And I said, I don't owe him no amends. I thought, that's my child. And she said, would you make amends to other people? And I said, well, I did. She said, why don't you think you owe him one? I said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, I'll just tell him I'm sorry later on. She said, no, you won't. You'll ask him, you have time to sit with me, and you want to talk to me and discuss the things that we've been through, or maybe the things you think I've done to you or that I have done to you, and we can talk about it. And that's what I did. So now he was mad, and he really took my inventory. And it was hard to sit there and listen to, but I knew it was so. And it's what changed. So you fast forward that, and he's married, and he's having his second child, and I'm standing in the hospital waiting for him to call me back, and so I can see my newest grandbaby, and he gave her to me, and he said, I said, well, what did you name her? And he said, her name is Isabella Page. And I said, well, golly, I hope she wears it better than me. You know what I'm saying? And you shouldn't have done that child that way. But anyway. But he said, Mama, I think you wear it pretty well. And that's come from, he used to call me Paige, and then he called me Mama Page, and now he calls me Mama. And I have the most wonderful relationship with my children today. My children so far they're not one of us. They're not one of us. I don't guess. I mean, they have potential. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people come in here and say, well, if you are, your children probably, well, mine aren't. So don't put that on your children yet. God's got plans. I don't know what it is, but I know I'm grateful that I am one. I looked all my life for my people, and I finally found them when I finally opened up to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And all I know is if I keep talking, I'm fixing to start lying. So I'm fixing to stop, and I love y'all, and thank y'all for letting me share.